Hey guys, welcome back. So today I'll be talking about the classical pathway of the complement system. This is the pathway of the complement system that will be taken by the complement system itself when the acquired arm of the um, acquired arm of the immune system is activated. That is when you have an infection, for you have a chronic infection, or sorry, not chronic infection, when you have a repeated infection and you already have an antibody, and therefore when the same infection comes again, there is an antigen antibody complex occurring, and this will eventually activate the classic pathway of the complement system. So first of all, this classic pathway, it needs antibody to present. So basically, which are IgG as well as IgM. So as you can see here, I put here that this is IgG and IgM. Okay. So when antigen first time enters the body, it does not trigger the classical pathway at all. It will only trigger the alternate as well as lectin pathway. So let's say you have a subsequent exposure to the pathogen, your body already has the immunoglobulin G as well as M. Yeah. So notice that if you can see here, the IgG molecule is present as two molecules and IgM molecule is actually present as one molecule. So reason is IgG needs two molecules in order to be activated in order to activate its classic pathway, whereas IgM needs one molecule only in order to activate its classical pathway. These antibodies are connected to the antigen. Yeah, these antibodies are connected to the surface of the pathogen. So once these antibodies are connected to the antigen on the surface of the pathogen, this will eventually activate the C1. Okay, as you can see here, antigen antibody complex eventually will activate C1. Okay, this is the C1, and C1 will eventually activate C2 and C4. So as you can see here, C1 will actually get activated. This will activate C2 and C4, and after that the pathway is all the same only. Okay, so first of all, let's look at C1. Okay, so let me just okay, so so let's look at C1. Here I've just now I've paused the video and I've drawn a video of how roughly C1 complement would actually look like. This is not exactly how it look like, but this is a rough idea. So first of all, C1 has 18 peptides, so which means it is basically a complex of enzyme. So it has a component known as C1q, which has 18 polypeptide, and this is actually the C1q, and this C1q part is the part that would attach to the immunoglobulin. So C1q attaches to the FC portion of the IgE. So okay, wait. Okay, so here I've taken some time to draw how Ig molecules. Basically I'm just magnifying what is here, and I've just magnified here. So this is the antigen on the surface of the pathogen. Okay, this is pathogen, this is the antigen, the black color one, and this is the antibody. So when the antibody binds to the antigen, this part is also known as the Fc portion. This Fc portion will eventually get revealed, and when this Fc portion gets revealed, this actually enables the C1q complement, the C1q part of the C1 complement to get onto and bind onto this Fc portion of the, excuse me, to the Fc portion of the immunoglobulin. Okay, and C1 then has 4 more proteins. Okay, these 4 more proteins is actually 1R, 1R, 1S, 1S. Okay, so basically there are like 2S and 2R. So when C1q attaches, when C1q, where's the, okay, when C1q attached to the Fc portion of the antibody, they became active, and this in turn activate the this in turn activate the should be this sentence activate the S. Okay, this sentence activate the S, and I'm really sorry, I'm just not feeling well. So this sentence activate the C1S, and when C1X becomes active, they will eventually cleave the C4 and C2 when they become in contact with the C1S. Okay, so the C1S is the main important one. So if you say after C1Q, if you want to ask if after C1Q this is the thing that is directly activated, that is C1S, why do I drew this thing here? So basically some people, when they want to remember the structure of the C1, they tend to, of course they will get the upper part right, but they will tend to confuse between S part as well as R part. So they might think R part is the outer one, S part is the inside. So how do I remember? Is by this diagram. Q is the this part, R is the one in between, and S is the one which is actually at the end of the complement, or of the whole complement. So basically when this C1S become active, they will eventually cleave the C4 and C2, and when they become that is when they become in contact with the C1S. Okay, so that is all about classical pathway. But you know, when we're talking about the alternate pathway and classical pathway, we have this the regulator substance. For example, for this we have H and I factor, and for there's no regulator factor for lectin, but there is an regulator factor for the alternate pathway. And for lectin pathway we don't have any regulator, and again for classical pathway we have a type of regulator, and that regulator is known as C1 esterase. This thing, that day when I made a mistake, this one should be convertase. Anything that cleaves is known as a convertase, and esterase is the regulator. There is no C3 esterase, there is only a C1 esterase. So C1 esterase is actually the regulator for the classical pathway. Okay, so C1 esterase is basically an enzyme that causes inactivation of one S as well as one R. So they will eventually cause the activation or inactivation of the one S as well as one R. So how does this occur? Basically, there has to be enough antigen and antibody that all the C1 esterase in that local area gets consumed, and even then there is still antigen and antibody activating the remaining C1Q. So that will lead to the cleavage of the C4 and C2. So let's say there is only a very small amount of inflammation or infection or anything. This C1 esterase, this C1 esterase can actually prevent the activation of the classical pathway. But when there is a lot of activation of the antigen antibody complex that C1 esterase cannot handle, it is beyond the amount of the C1 esterase, then only the classical pathway will eventually get activated. That means this pathway is not going to be triggered if C1 esterase is not overwhelmed. So that's all for so that's all for this video. Thank you, and catch you guys up in later videos.